Welcome to the Smart Tennis Podcast, where we uncover how players got started, the training secrets that shaped them, and the life lessons they learned along the way.
We're joined today by Garcian De Cruz, the head tennis coach at Meredith College. I've known Garcian for quite a while. We've been friends for a long time. Started playing tennis together many years ago and been friends ever since. We've worked together as well. So we're going to go over Garcian's sort of career path as a head coach, sort of how he got started, advice to players, things like that. So let's start at the beginning, Garcian. Tell us the origin story. How'd you get involved in tennis?
Yeah, no, well, excited to be here with the podcast and do this episode. And yeah, from a tennis standpoint, I mean, I guess I started playing as a kid. It's kind of funny. It's like one of those things where you don't really remember exactly how you started, but you're just kind of aware that it started at some point. So for me, maybe around 7 years old or so, my parents were part of a club called Southern Village in Chapel Hill. And my sister also played a little bit at the time. So kind of everyone was involved with the sport except for me. I just had an interest in it because my parents played it. They, gave me a racket, had me out on court a little bit. And then I would say it only took me like a few weeks before I got really into it and started liking it a lot. So then started, joining in on some kids clinics. I think maybe I did a lesson or two just to kind of understand it. But primarily my dad is the one who coached me and my mom as well. So, they were the two that were pretty invested in teaching the sport to me and helping me learn it. My sister and I also played a handful of times. She was playing, for her middle school and high school teams as well. So, yeah, just was kind of a tennis family. It was natural for me. And then, yeah, just was a big part of my life. I would say it's definitely like a big part of my identity in high school as well. A lot of people had books and school knowledge. I think tennis was the primary thing for me. I was like overly into the sport. I'd watch it all the time on TV, and I was about to make a joke on YouTube. Was YouTube even a thing when I was in?
When I was in high school, it was not when you were. I think.
Yeah, that's right. That was like 2008, right?
It was. Yeah.
I was dating myself badly there.
Did you do any other sports when you were that age, or was it just tennis at the beginning?
No, it was mainly just tennis. I mean, soccer was kind of the other thing that I was into. I mean, I would say growing up, it was soccer and tennis were like 50-50. Once kind of high school hit, it really was just tennis. I think I was always better at tennis as well. Like soccer was, a passion of mine, but certainly wasn't, as good at it as I was with tennis. I guess I'll put it out there. I did try out for the Chapel Hill High School soccer team. I didn't make it actually, which was kind of sad. It's tough. But my soccer dreams kind of ended there. But no, but tennis was, I was always better at it anyways, and knew that, that's what I wanted to invest my time in. And then, yeah, after tennis in high school was done, so it was different for us because we didn't, UTR and all these other metrics didn't exist. So I didn't really know how to get recruited to college. And I wasn't really ranked high enough, or necessarily good enough, you could even say, to garner like any attention from coaches directly. So, my parents just didn't know, like, should we reach out to coach? How's that? So the recruiting kind of side of it never really happened. So I never really saw, like, could I have played D3 tennis or D2 tennis or whatever? Just wasn't a reality for me really. So decided to go to Elon University for, academics primarily. Loved the campus. It was a lot of fun there. Got involved with club tennis there. That's also how I bumped into Coach Leonard a handful of times. Just had a chance to kind of interact with him and some of the team members there. And which was pretty cool, to see obviously a D1 team. Got to watch a couple practices from afar as we also had club practices going on simultaneously and things like that. So I think it just exposed me to, like, tennis didn't have to end at high school, even though I didn't play college. So went to do that, had fun playing with the club team. And then after college, just went right into kind of business and sales and kind of put tennis on the side. Didn't really think there was anything else left for me with tennis after that. And yeah, I mean, just
Now,
then,
I know your father and mother quite well.
yeah.
I played tennis with them before, and we've hung out. And I know your dad is an excellent teacher himself. So when you were younger, what was that dynamic like in terms of tennis with his teaching? Were there any other coaches at any other time when you were younger?
Yeah, when the place that we met, Chapel Hill Tennis Club, when I was growing up, especially in high school, like my parents became members there, and we had a chance to play there quite a bit. I did interact with the coaches there. I had a few lessons, did some clinics, summer camps, things like that. But yeah, again, primarily was my dad. The dynamic I thought was fine. I mean, it's funny. I didn't know what it was supposed to be, so that's the other thing too. Like I didn't have all these other coaches or this huge tennis background or experience where I knew like this is what this experience should be like or this is what it shouldn't be like. I'm just thinking to myself like I'm playing tennis with my dad. I know that it's something that I'm passionate about and I want to keep training it and keep learning it with him. And yeah, I mean, I would say he definitely was on my case a little bit about attitude. That was like the number one thing was I was a bit of a hothead. Probably still am a little bit. But that was like the main part of like if we ever had any disagreements or if we ever had any moments where it was tough, it was usually him talking me, through like attitude just has to be better, mentality has to be better. And like you said, my dad pretty well. I think that's also his forte as a coach is from that mental aspect, from that kind of outside of just the physical aspect. He's really good at that stuff. He's really good at talking you through that. So him and I got along really well. I mean, obviously drive me to tournaments, would be with me on court. We'd work through stuff. We never really did traditional drills, things like that. We would typically hit and then just play matches. And he would, give me tips and pointers, throughout and, during the changeover, stuff like that. He would tell me like, look, you're not playing this the right way, or you're doing really well on this part, but we need to improve here. So honestly, I loved every second of it. I don't think I'd trade it for anything else. But I will say it was just also a lack of understanding from both of us as to what that experience was supposed to look like or could look like if we had taken it to the next level or anything like that.
Yeah, it's so interesting like the early exposure to something, especially when it's your parents who's involved in it as well. That was sort of like with me and golf. My dad has always worked on golf courses and he's really big into it. And so he would, when I was young, even way before I started tennis, he would help me like with my golf swing. And that sort of, even though it wasn't like formal training and he's not an expert by any means, but it was sort of his passion for it and the consistency of the training and just enjoying it and just really focusing on the fundamentals was something that really stuck with me. But then also I had sort of at the same time a lot of experience, not from my parents, but I was really interested in music. So I started doing a lot of lessons, but that was a very formal thing. And my parents aren't musicians at all. So I got to see sort of how on the formal side, how the training and then the track that you can go down in terms of competitions and things like that is something that I wouldn't have even known about, on the golf side. Sort of what you're talking about, like it wasn't a formal thing and you went to competitions, but in terms of the recruiting aspect, that was something that was lacking due to probably the informality of it. Is that what you'd say?
Yeah, 100%. And, the other part of it is like, with all due respect to the coaches and people that like we worked with at the club, it was never like communicated to my parents like, hey, your kid's good enough to potentially play D3 at like these schools, things like that. And I would say, as much as I respected those coaches and the facility and the club, I would say that was probably the biggest drop off as far as like what could have been, if they had communicated more to my parents, like, hey, your kid's been in our clinics. We've seen him on the club campus. We think he's a solid player. Have you thought about college tennis? Have you guys talked about it? What does that look like? And I know for a fact that during my junior tennis time, especially, like I definitely had the game to at least talk about D3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, D2 probably would have been tough, I think, but D3 certainly I would have had opportunities there. And so, yeah, it's hard to say I would regret something that I never really felt like I missed out on because I just didn't know about it. Now as a college coach, I will say like that's something with, recruiting that I deal with is I try to go to facilities, club coaches, other, high school coaches and try and spread that information out like, hey, your tennis journey could not be, I mean, if it's something you want to do, we can find ways to do it. And there's so many great academic schools out there that if tennis is a passion, we can find a school that fits your academic needs and wants, as well as, what you'd want to do with tennis. So I think that's just something that parents, we want to try and get out as far as information. That journey doesn't really have to end. Now, the flip side of that, though, is also you can still have a great college tennis experience without playing NCAA tennis. You can play club tennis like I did. You can get involved with, other organizations. You can play outside of it, 18 and over USTA leagues, UTR tournaments. But there's, that journey is just up to what you want it to be. If you're very focused on academics and that's the main priority for you, then I would say, trying to squeeze that in with Division III tennis or something isn't the way to go. But I definitely was not an academically inclined person. So I would say for me, maybe it would have been fun. It would have been something I would have appreciated doing. But, it's in the past, as Rafa says, if can't, it's not real. So what it was in the past, I can't be mad about. But yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to have those options. And I think that's, a main point I want to get across to parents now is, that journey can still continue.
Yeah. You've coached in college at Division I, II, and III, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the differences at those levels that you've noticed?
I mean, I think obviously the biggest difference I think would be from D1 to D3. I want to say this though, there are great teams at each level. The top teams in D3, top teams in D2, things like that. People get kind of caught up in, D1 is just superior to D2, D3. It really just depends. I mean, I would say from a tennis standpoint, yes, like D1 tennis from what I've seen is a whole league, different. When I was at Tusculum, they're D2, and when I got to the program, Tusculum and still to this day, I mean, is ranked, in that top 50 for D2. I would say they would have a very hard time competing with a mid-major in Division I. So there is a huge change in that level. There's also a huge change in attitude. As you go from D1, D2 to D3, it's sort of like a scale. And I would say athletics, and academics kind of change on that path. So you're almost more invested in the athletic side at D1. As you go to D2 and D3, it kind of flips where you're more invested in the academic side. So that's a big change I've seen. Without saying anything negative about D2 and D3, because I do think there's a lot of merit in both of those as far as tennis goes. D1 for me was just a whole different animal. I mean, you would see players out at practice, 30, 45 minutes prior to practice starting. You would see them just doing resistance bands, jogging laps, doing all these things. And then you would see that after practice as well. So if you had a 2.5 hour practice, there'd be guys that were out there for 4 hours, that were doing extra stuff, hitting afterwards, stretching, all these things. So I just didn't see that at the D2 level. I mean, we tried to implement some of it, but I think the attitude is a little different there. I just think it's part of that culture with D1 and D2. And again, there are D2 teams that take it that seriously, and there are D3 teams that take it that seriously. But it's just, I think that level is just so different for D1. But yeah, those are probably the biggest changes. And then, UTR ranges probably for players.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It seems that as you get more and more at a higher level, it's the internal drive to succeed almost takes over some of the other factors in terms of importance for each player. Would you say that's sort of true?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. I mean, I would say the internal drive, the self-motivation factor is arguably the thing that sets you apart. I mean, again, like I said, these guys would be out there 30, 45 minutes prior. That was because of us. We never told them to do that. I mean, we would recommend players be ready to go. When we said practice is starting at this time, it means it's starting at this time. Like we're getting on court and we're going to run drills at 3 o'clock or at whatever time. So it was implied directly that, you guys got to be ready for that. But again, I mean, I remember, I don't know about you. I remember like when I warmed up for tennis, it's like 10 minutes, like I would maybe jog a lap if my coach made me, but if it was on my own, I would probably like, just loosen up a little bit, do some mini tennis for like 5 minutes. And then, we'd hit from the baseline ready to go. So I think like that's a huge difference. I can't compare that to you because for those of you who don't know, Daniel takes health very seriously as far as how he prepares for matches and things like that. So I think you're definitely in the D1 mindset. I'm certainly not, but
Well, I might be in the mindset. I'm not in the skill level though.
fair enough. No, but I think I think that's a huge part of it. You have to have that self motivation. You have to have those things. Like if I'm telling you that on day one of college, you don't have it.
Mhm.
I mean, and I know that sounds tough, but it's like if I'm telling you on day one, like, hey, you've got to be doing extra. You should be coming out early to train, to warm up, things like that. You just don't have it. I mean, you won't be at that high D1 level.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. So.
Are there any other traits besides just the skill level itself for maybe young players who are looking to play in college?
Yeah, the number one thing I say from recruiting, it's got to be attitude. It's got to be attitude, and I think some players will understand that. Some players will try and downplay it, but I think if you're not in the right headspace to compete every day, then it's not worth it. And I will say, burnout is real. Those things are real. You're going to have that, maybe from high school, it was a little bit more casual. And now, you're training so much and it's taken out such a huge chunk of your free time, things like that. But, and you have to balance it with a college education, of course. But I would say like that's probably the biggest thing. If your attitude is self-motivated, if your attitude is strong, if you're not easily broken by setbacks, then I think you'll do really well there. So yes, if you can hit a tennis ball hard, if you can be on the court long, that's huge. But I mean, frankly, you'll see talented players lose purely off of attitude and kind of how that shifts, that mentality alone. So I think, if you don't have that, then it's not the right thing for you.
Much do you think that the attitude can be shaped over time with the coach? Is there time, in the 4 years of college, or is it too late by then? Should it be in high school or even early? Obviously, probably the earlier the better, but, is it even possible to mold that attitude, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like I said, there's some things where if you come into college on day one, if I have to tell you, then you're not ready. And you'll see that with some players. Like I had guys, over the time that I've coached where it's like, okay, you could be this person, but you're not that person right now. And I think that's something like, yeah, you can definitely improve it. I just think that if you don't have the drive to want to improve it, or you don't have the understanding, the maturity to say, I'm not there right now, I could get there, but I'm not there right now. Then you'll be, you can be fine. You can work through it. But there's players that'll come in that'll just expect it to be good, because you have to think like some of the best high school players, they've been on the top of the world for, the last 3-4 seasons. They feel like, okay, I'm just dominating this part of it, the conference or whatever. And then they come into college tennis and they're like the third worst player on the team because everyone's coming, everyone is the top player from their high school team and whatever. So I think if you're not willing to put that aside and just start, at ground zero and work your way up, then it's just not for you, or at least you won't succeed the way you think you will.
So much of it, I think, comes down to the dynamics between the parents and the children and how they want their children to behave and the way the parents behave. Frankly, I mean, I've seen so many parents who teach their children, and it's like the child adopts the attitude of the parents in many ways, and I think it's a very important thing, I think, for parents to know that their children are sort of always watching and absorbing what they do in a way. Or do you have any advice specifically to families with children, maybe younger in terms of these things?
Yeah, what I'll say always is, if parents, especially if they're on court with their kids, like my dad was, I would say train mentality and attitude first and foremost. Technique, especially when you're 5, 6, 7 years old, you can teach technique, and yes, it will get better, but it's not like it's going to be permanent at the age of 5. If I teach a kid how to hit a forehand at 5 years old, they're easily going to be able to change it when they're 7, 8, 9 years old, whatever it may be. The one thing you can't change, though, is the mentality and the attitude. If they start learning tennis where you're telling a kid like, hey, this is good enough and doesn't need improvement or couldn't be better or whatever, then yeah, you're going to be in a tough spot because yeah, encourage them, obviously. Don't be mean to them. But I think like, there's a big difference between encouraging a player and making them feel like they have no room to improve or like they're so great right now. I would say if I was personally coaching, my kids, if I was saying to them like, hey, you're missing forehands, but it's okay. It's going to get better. Let's work on this. Let's work on that. But I would still make it clear to them that, yeah, you're missing forehands. You're missing shots. We can work through it. It can be better, but you want them to understand that there is improvement to be made, and you do it in a nurturing way. But yeah, I mean, you have to be careful. Because I sometimes see parents that are like, oh, that's great. And that's all they ever say to their kids. And by the time they're like 12, 13, I mean, right? From a club coaching perspective, they get to us at, high school age and they think that their tennis is so good because that's what they've been told their whole life. Then we walk in and say, hey, we gotta fix a few things here. And it's like, all right, well, we got to start here. We got to change this. And then, they go home and tell their parents. The parents are calling us like, why does my kid think that they're not good? And all this other stuff. And then it just becomes an issue. So I think, yeah, the biggest point of advice to parents is coach attitude, but be realistic. Necessarily say good job if, there is some improvement to be made. Be positive, nurture them, but certainly, push them a little bit as well. Let them know that there's still more that we can give and there's still more we can do. So I don't know if that's controversial or not. I don't know. Maybe it is, but
I think it makes sense. And then also on the opposite end, you have, some parents and even coaches where nothing is ever good enough. Everything's wrong all the time, and that's detrimental probably to most people's development. Some people that might motivate them, but I think the vast majority, I would think it's more detrimental.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the flip side of that philosophy, right? And I'll say this, that's not just, 5, 6 years. I mean, that's the college players too. Like if you're negative with them more times than not, then yeah, they're going to lose the passion and the fun. And frankly, they're not going to play for you nearly as hard because, there's just that attitude where it's like, this guy's always pushing me. He's always tough on me. He's never giving me any positive energy. Then when you're on court with them and you're like, hey, why aren't you positive? They're sitting there like, why do you think? It's like, you've never done that with me. So yeah, you can't be too positive and you can't be too negative. You definitely have to be in the middle there. And I think, like I said, that's where the player also has to feel comfortable speaking up with their coaches and with their parents. I think one thing that was easily mitigated with working with my dad is it's my dad. So communication was pretty easy there. You know what I mean? Like you were upset with him. It didn't matter. You're going to eat dinner with him in an hour. So you better have these conversations and he's the one giving you a ride home. So,
yeah.
If we ever did have frustration, which we did, I mean, there were days where the car ride home was quiet. I would say like at some point we communicate. At some point, maybe after I've had time to cool off, or maybe he's figured out the right thing he wants to say, then before dinner or after dinner, we'll talk about it. So yeah, you just have to have that. And I think, it was a benefit to me that it was my dad, but if it's a private coach, I tell all my players, communicate with me, talk to me, come to my office, come talk to me during practices, things like that. As a club coach, I know for a fact you did it and I did it as well. We'd tell parents and players like, communicate with us. If there's an issue or if there's like, we're working on something and you want to change, let's talk about it. But I think the one big misconception is parents sometimes misconstrue communication with demand. And I think that's an issue sometimes. It's like we'll say, communicate with us, talk to us about what maybe is working or not working with your child. And then they'll use it as an opportunity to say like, this is how it should be. And then you get into a whole nother thing. And I don't know if you've had experience with that. I certainly have, where parents, I say like, hey, communicate, that I instantly regret giving that advice out. I'm like, actually everyone else can communicate. Maybe not this one.
Yeah. There's definitely sort of a fine line between allowing a coach to, have control over shaping the development of your child versus you having so much input that maybe for whatever reason, the way that you learned as a parent there's been ways of teaching that supersede that. Possibly. I know when I was teaching, I'd have some parents I would see them like not during a lesson with me, but just on another court, like, hit your forehand this way. And the dad's holding the racket in a continental grip. And it's like, this little kid is not going to be hitting a super flat forehand with a continental grip. It's like the dad learned on a wood racket.
Yeah,
I need to
that back when the tennis balls were white.
Yeah, it's like we kind of teach things a little differently now. I'm not saying that the old ways are bad at all, but it's just I think everybody, that's again communication. The parents and the coaches need to be on the same page about what's being taught. What we want the student to learn, how we want them to learn. I think those are all important to tell people up front. It's like we're going to be working with them with the semi-western grip or something. It's like just let them know that their swing shape is going to look like this, so that way the parent's not going to freak out and say, well, this isn't the way I learned. That type of thing.
Yeah, well, and something I think we're both excited about with this podcast is to bring some of that stuff to light. I mean, I think one thing that we hope to do with this, interviewing each other, but also having a chance to speak with other people is, are there things that like we can talk about that will help parents understand, and not just parents. I mean, we're saying parents a lot, but like this is facilities, this is coaches, this is everyone to kind of have a collective where we can discuss these things and feel like, maybe we'll get more on the same page of what are some of the best business practices as far as, being tennis coaches and facilities and clubs. But like you said, I mean, it changes with the level, it changes with each kid, how old they are, who the parents are, kind of how they're dealing with things. But yeah, I mean, yeah, parent involvement is definitely something where it's dicey. I mean, I hate to say it, but it just is. You have parents that may know the sport and feel like they know more than you. And then you have parents who don't know the sport at all and still feel like they know more than you. Mm-hmm. Rarely does a parent think they know less than you, is the point I'm making.
And usually, strangely, the parents who do think that tend to be the better players, and they just allow the coach, because they know, therefore, that the coaches are qualified and good players so that they can teach their kids. It's rare that you have a really advanced, parent who's a player and they're trying to control like a lesson or something. Seems to be kind of rare.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we talk about like, think about trades, like if you're a mechanic or an electrician, it's like, are you really going to stop them halfway through their work and give them pointers on what something should be? If you're trusting us to coach your children, then you got to trust us to coach your children. Now, if you don't like it and you want to switch coaches and stuff like that, then so be it. I mean, my rule with parents too is like, I never stop them from being able to watch the practice. I don't allow parents on the court. I think, I know you're a little different with that. I think every coach is a little different. Some coaches love it, hate it, whatever, indifferent. I personally don't like it just because I don't like my players on court feeling like everything they're doing, their parent is just like staring them down the, watching it. I could kind of care less if they are watching me coach, but I just feel like the kids also don't necessarily open up nearly as much because they maybe don't want to say something that their parent would correct them on or something like that. Whereas like if the parents can see the practice, but they're not within hearing distance, the kid will start opening up a little bit like, oh, this happened at school, or like, oh yeah, my mom's, she can be mean sometimes, whatever the example is, of all that stuff. I think like, you just don't get that connection with the player. And for me, it's detrimental because if I can't do that, then most of my coaching philosophy is building that relationship with the player, understanding them, so that if I am going to snap at them about a forehand or something like that, I know the right way to do it where it won't, be upsetting. I can actually say like, hey, that we're not getting this right now. We need to be better. But I now know how to communicate with the kid. If I don't know that and I'm just kind of going off of like their parents staring them down during the whole lesson, I may not react the right way for a certain scenario to improve the player. So I think that's all for me. Part of my philosophy is, parents can watch, but they got to stay a certain distance away so that I can develop that relationship with the kid. But again,
on the opposite end too, you have some parents who want to be on court because they're sort of afraid to let their child sort of, maybe they're so used to being close to them. And it's like, now your kid's playing a tournament. It's like the parent's not going to be on the court. It's like they're going to have to be used to playing without mom sitting right on the sideline, on the bench.
So. Well, and that's how it should be in a way, because like the players also need to develop, like, I need to problem solve, think through these things by myself. Again, like tennis is such a difficult mental sport. If you feel like there's a crutch there every time, then you're never going to grow on your, like, it's never going to happen. I think that's the other thing too. Like, and I'll say this, that's one of the most impressive things, like my time at Elon and Tusculum. I dealt with mostly international players. I make the joke, but we had Elon, there were about 9 players, 2 Americans, that I worked with on the men's team. At Tusculum, I was the men's and women's coach, and we had about 21 players. My time there, 1 American. So 3 Americans out of 30 players that I coached over 2 seasons. And the difference there is that means there were 27 players that were across the world, basically, like all over the world, international, and they had to leave their hometowns, their families, their friends, brothers, sisters, parents, all over the place to come here to play. And the mentality is just so different. Again, like the American players, you'd have parents coming to matches and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But my point is, like, it's just different, I think, culturally, to see some of those, international players be that way, where it's like, yeah, they'll FaceTime parents all the time. And I used to be like, wow, they're FaceTiming them a lot. And then I think to myself, I've never been within driving distance of my family, so I don't know what that's like. And but you do have to have that degree of separation, because, again, when you're in college, my philosophy as a tennis coach, my policy, actually, I should say, is I don't allow parents to communicate with me about anything to do with the player unless it's a medical or family emergency. If it's something like that, then I will open lines of communication with parents. But if it's something like, hey, I want to talk to you, like my kid didn't play, I'm like, okay. That's, I don't even respond. I put them right in the trash. Maybe, you know what? I should make a folder of it, really, and just put them in a folder. It's like parent complaints that I never respond to. But
Gosh.
But I mean, parents need to understand that too. Like, at some point, you have to be able to kind of let go.
I mean, it's the analogy would be, a parent like emailing their student's college professor, being like, "Why is my kid's grade this?"
I know.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, if it's that bad, then you got other problems.
Yeah,
you got to deal with. No, I mean, I think, from coaching standpoint, there's so many different philosophies. I mean, heck, I wouldn't even consider. I mean, I think I'm a good coach, but I there's so much more for me to learn still. I just turned 30. I just turned 30. It's been 6 months since I turned 30. Halfway to 31. But I've learned so much over the last few seasons. Like I still don't consider myself to be in the prime of my coaching career. I still think there's a lot more I'm learning, and the more I interact with other coaches and players and things like that, the more I learn different things. But I'd like to think that, from a standpoint of personality, I try to get to know these coaches. Like when we travel, I try to talk to the coaches and, have banter and with referees, with players, things like that. I try my best to make sure that people feel comfortable. Oh, this is a cool guy. He's a cool coach. And that way I get to know more people and get to learn more about them. Try to connect on social media, things like that. And I would say players should have the same attitude, and so should parents. That should be a big part of it. Like when you're traveling with your kids, with tournaments and going to facilities for lessons, things like that, connect with the other parents, connect with the other players, because you never know. There's going to be so many opportunities where maybe you need a doubles partner for a tournament. You've made friends now with people from this clinic, so now you've got a few people you can call. So I think that's a big part too that goes under the radar. I'm sure we'll discuss that so much more over the lifespan of this podcast, but I would say that's something too that goes underrated and under the radar too, is really, I mean, it's like network, right? I mean, you have to do that as a player.
Every opportunity is an opportunity for learning and making new connections,
That's right.
And ideas. But yeah, the social aspect of it is so important too. Even if you are, I mean, doing a tournament or something, it's, interacting with the other players in a non-competitive way, I think is very important as well, just for player development, for, person's development. It's very, perhaps an underrated aspect of the whole thing. It's the social component too.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's probably the most difficult part of being a club director, I would say. But as we've both experienced in our own ways, but I think I mean, that the social part is so big. And, I would say with college tennis, that too, if you don't get along with your teammates, it does make a difference, I think. It definitely does. People think it's an individual sport and you're out there by yourself, but I'll tell you, man, the Elon guys, I'm using them as an example, to say that team environment was very strong. I mean, we definitely went through some moments of adversity that season. And I'd say, we were one result shy of where we wanted to be. We lost in the CAA championship match to, a really, really good team. And I feel like even getting up to that point was difficult. We almost lost in the first round of the CAA tournament. Actually, it was a match that started outside, ended inside. And gosh, I mean, we probably finished around like 11 p.m. It was a 4-3 win against Campbell. Remember it clear as day. And I'll tell you, like, even just getting through that as a team, like if you don't have that team energy, if you don't have that passion and that chemistry between the team members, you're not making it through that match. No, you're just not. And I think the energy we were able to give, Oscar was the deciding match. And of course he was, he was having a great year that year. I just feel like, yes, he's an individually talented player, so many great skills and such a great attitude, but I still feel like that little bit that you need to kind of get past the finish line comes from the team. I think, and I'd argue that was helpful for him to have that energy, to have that support to get through it. So, you don't have that, then you're not winning that match. I mean, clear as day, it's just not happening. So I think, and he did a great job of, using that energy the right way too. There's also that, his attitude, his maturity helped him stay focused, while also having, level head with his emotions and everything like that. So yeah, so many intricacies with this sport, definitely. I mean,
you've had the maybe unique opportunity to do sort of both club teaching and also obviously the college teaching and high school too, sort of the whole gambit, if you will. Do you think there's a difference, any benefits or drawbacks to sort of taking lessons at like a club versus maybe a dedicated academy versus just like, at the public park with somebody, or versus with the parent? Like there's a lot of roads you can go down. Do you see any pros or cons to those?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I think there's pros and cons to everything. I mean, when you're in an academy, whether it's a boarding academy or just, a tennis academy you go to every day after school, whatever it may be, versus, just a guy with a basket of balls that is coaching by himself, at the public courts. I think it's all up to what the player wants out of that experience. If you want a high performance experience, if you're able to commit yourself to that, then yeah, there's cons then, I would say, to doing just random tennis lessons at a public park versus an academy or a club. And then if you want a recreational experience and along that way you realize you maybe have a little bit more talent and passion for the sport, then you can adjust and adapt, I think. But yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. Like even if you're high performance, like some high performance facilities and academies are not what they seem. I mean, you and I have experienced this quite a bit. I feel like just, being pros at different places and hearing from other coaches. But I can tell you from personal experience, there's been facilities where I sit there and think to myself, like, this is a high performance program in the marketing, but, in actual, implementation of like what they're doing, there's definitely some discrepancy between what I thought it would be and what it is. So I think it just depends, like what that looks like for each player. I would always tell parents and players to consult like trusted coaches and, club owners, things like that. Like if they have a coach where they kind of knows the lay of the land, like ask them like, hey, this is the experience I want. What do you think is good for that? And I just think people are afraid to ask, or maybe they don't know who to ask sometimes on that front. Like my parents, they were knowledgeable, but I would certainly say that, with my tennis, they never really knew, like, should we ask these questions or not? It just was never really made apparent to them.
Yeah.
That side of it. But even still, like I would say my parents still did a pretty good job of getting me to tournaments, things like that. So it's up to the experience you want. I really only thought about college tennis like end of my junior year. And by that point, it's like, you're not really sure. So, maybe it wouldn't have happened anyways. Who knows? So yeah, again, as a coach though, and I guess I could ask you this question too. Like, did you ever feel like parents came to you and asked you? Cause I feel like that was also one of the things where like, we almost had to say it before any parents even thought about it.
Yeah, I would say at most levels, it was that was the case. Even for younger kids, introducing the parents to like junior team tennis, things like that. or even smaller, small tournaments, little local things. It is on the onus is sort of on the coaches, I think, to introduce those things to parents, because they might just not be knowledgeable about it. Or if they try and, research it online, it's like they're inundated with all these different things. It's like, what is applicable to that child? The coach will know a lot better about it. So I think it is sort of up to the coaches to be like, hey, I think this would be good for your kid's development. There's this tournament happening. We should get him playing on this team, that type of thing. So I think it is important, though, sort of, building tournament experience early on, or even something less, competitive, like junior team tennis, where it's mostly for fun. But, there is a tournament at the end of the year, and I mean, every kid I've had who's done that has had a good experience with it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great sort of building block, and you can see how much further you want to go with it from there, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I
For
think the
sure.
important thing is that there are options for what everybody wants to do. That's sort of the important thing, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Like even if you're a high school kid going to college, there's options. Even after college, there's options. I mean, I will say a little bit of kind of the tennis journey that we were talking about for me was when I went into marketing and sales right after I graduated from Elon. Um, I mean, this isn't really out there. I guess I'll put it out there now. I quit my job after about like 3 or 4 months. I just was like, I mean, I remember talking to you a little bit about it as it was happening, but I basically was like, you know what? I just find myself missing this sport. I find myself, you know, dedicating every free moment I have to wanting to go play, to wanting to watch, highlight videos, whatever it may be. And I was just like, it's just, something I want to keep doing. And at the time, I think we both were sort of like not really sure. And because I know you have a bit of an unorthodox journey as far as like the way you went into tennis. I think we both were sort of like not really sure, was this a job? Could we actually do this and make money and make a living? So when I quit my job, I actually didn't know the answer to that question yet. I just kind of knew that I didn't want to do what I was doing. So I quit my job, and then the next day I did research onto like becoming a tennis pro. And I'm almost positive that's like exactly what I typed into Google. It's like, how do you become a tennis pro or something like that? And I got into, the USPTA. I think it's called like RSPCA. I mean, what is it called now? It's like some other, it's not USPTA. I don't even know. Whatever, it's changed it now. But, I saw the USPTA exam. I was like, you take that, then you're like a certified pro. And that was kind of considered like the gold standard at that point, is what you could take. So I decided I signed up for it, went to the classes, they gave like a little notebook that you have to study, you have to learn, and then once you take like a written test, and then you'll have an on-court test, and they just kind of test like they'll cut the court up into sections essentially with rope, and they'll feed you balls, you have to hit them in certain spots with top spin, flat, slice. They really well. It's certainly not a simple exam. Like, you have to have a decent amount of tennis proficiency to actually complete it. But once you do, then you've got that certification. Then you can put out some applications to clubs that are looking for like part-time pros or full-time pros. And hey, I'm USPTA certified. I've done this training, and it's like having a kind of a degree, for example, for tennis. So then you kind of work your way through that. Then I worked at Southern Village. Funny enough, my first ever club that my parents were at. Started there for a couple years, and then got my first director of tennis job in Shelby, North Carolina, at Cleveland Country Club, and I had a great time there. A lot of learning experiences there. Kind of went from being a part-time, full-time tennis pro to a tennis director, which was a whole different world for me. I went from just teaching lessons, clinics, camps, to running those things and having to hire staff and all that stuff. And then we both then met up at Prosperity Athletic Club, where we were at for a little bit together. And then I know you stayed there. I went off to pursue a different opportunity in New London. And so, yeah. And then just decided after, a few years of doing the private club route that I wanted a change of scenery, wanted to kind of switch it up a little bit, quit my job as a club director, and started my master's. for sport management. And then as that happened, the position at Elon came open, and, sent Coach Leonard a message and was like, hey, I'm at a good point here in my life where, this could be a good opportunity. Let's have a conversation. So we had, I think maybe one or two phone calls, met in person. I think really we only met in person once. And then, and a couple days later, he was like, when can you start? And that's kind of how that journey happened. So it's funny, somebody who I met, 10 years earlier by being a club player at Elon ended up being the person who opened the door for me in college. And I will say that it's one of the most fascinating things for me. I don't know if I'm sure no one else will think it's fascinating, but I think it is kind of wild that you bump into somebody for what really amounts, like my whole time at Elon was like, all that considered, I only talked to Coach Leonard for like 5 minutes, out of 4 years of being there. And that ended up leading me to a whole new career path 10 years later. And I still think about it now, like how crazy that was. And I told at the end of the year when we were on court after the loss in the championship, I told Coach Leonard in front of everyone, like, the opportunity you gave me, this job that you've given me has completely changed my life. And I was like, that, I'll be forever grateful to him and indebted to him for that, because not only did he give me an opportunity, but he gave me an opportunity at a very, very good school. I mean, I got lucky. That I can tell you. I mean, what my dad always says is, is like luck is when preparation meets opportunity. It's one of the sayings that's been going around for a while, but he always says that to me. And I'm like, look, this was if that's the definition of luck, this was definitely lucky for me. I was in a good place and the preparation was there and, the opportunity was there. So yeah, Coach Leonard's certainly on my list of people that at the end of my career, whatever it looks like, he'll be getting a huge thank you for everything he did.
Well, I'm just happy to hear that your dad's teaching didn't go in one ear and out the other.
Oh, you'd have to ask him about that. I don't know. Sometimes it does. It just depends. Just depends on what it is. When it's that thing, then yeah, no. I think the important stuff I remember. Look, my dad loved him to death, but he, some of the stuff, like it's just, I can't remember all the, wasn't it pearls of wisdom? Pearls?
Yeah, that's great. That's right. Yeah.
He gives. No, it's like, it's great. He gives such great advice, but it's like 24/7. So you have to it's hard to remember sometimes. You have better memory than me. I don't know. I think honestly, you remember more of the stuff he says than I do.
Well, I listen to sages when they come, and right. He is one of them.
That's right. Well, and I will say this, the craziest thing, like just my year at Elon, when I was like, oh, I'm just this, I'm just this guy that's trying to learn this and coach here with this team. Then when I got hired as the head coach at Tusculum the following year, that was another huge shift. I went from being a private coach to being a mid-major Division I coach. And now I'm going to a top 50 D2 head coach. And I'm like, it's every step of the way it's a learning process. Coach Leonard, I think, he taught me so many things. The connections he had, the schools we played, what I got to see on court was big. Another huge shout out to the players on the Elon team. They were great. Honestly, with all things considered, I wasn't that coach that could necessarily play in with them or anything like that. I wasn't a hitting partner. I was a lot more of, on the technical side of it, not necessarily on court with them hitting. They still handled and kind of dealt with that really well. Because you would think, like, I've seen some of the assistant coaches, like even after I left, they had assistant coaches at Elon that were, from a player standpoint, certainly, much higher level than I was. But I would say, like, they were really great about listening to me, even if they felt like I had something positive to say or I could contribute. I do feel like they were really good about, like, this is what we need from you, coach, and this is like what we can, what would help us. And then I'm able to kind of like learn that, on the fly as well and try and do what I could. And I do think I helped. I certainly don't think I didn't help, but I will say, like, it was a learning experience. There were some times where, I was still kind of learning, like, should I step in and say something? Should I coach this part? Should I talk to this player after this point? And honestly, sometimes I made the wrong decisions. Sometimes I would do something that pissed the player off, and then, kind of like, all right, let this guy cool off before I talk to him again. But you learn, you live and you learn. It's something. Even as a head coach, it will happen. It wasn't just when I was an assistant. As a head coach as well. Players will basically be like, "Go away,"
Mhm.
and you're like, "All right,
Mhm.
I guess I will." But yeah, I mean, as we give advice to parents and players, I'd also say to coaches, like, stay humble, because one thing that being at Elon taught me was humility. And I certainly understood that I wasn't this high profile assistant coach that, a school like this would typically have, but I had an opportunity to learn. I had an opportunity to be a part of something big. And if you've got the right, people around you, like Coach Leonard was incredible about how he, was teaching me and talking me through some things, and, also giving me the power to kind of be myself and do my own thing. The players also were incredible to have. And if, like I said, I'm just incredibly lucky to have been a part of that Elon team and learn from them. I feel just as grateful to be a part of Tusculum and the organization that we had there, the team we had there. And yeah, excited to be here. New chapter back home, I think is great for me. And, the girls here at Meredith have been, so willing to learn and buy into what we're doing. I think still going to be some bumps in the road, some obstacles to overcome, but, excited about what we're doing here. And again, just stay, humble and try and learn as much as you can. It's my first year with another team. So, I don't want to walk in here like I have all the answers. I still want to make sure that I'm taking my opportunities to learn. And, the staff we have at the school with the other coaches, they've been incredible, talking me through things and trying to, give advice as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a learning process through and through, not just for parents and players, but for me as well as a coach.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, there are many paths one can take, many opportunities for players, for jobs after college, even if you don't play on the team for tennis players, many opportunities out there. And I guess the important thing is that you're always learning from them, and using the knowledge to keep getting better at whatever you're doing.
and it's technically a trade job, so AI can't take it from us. So
Until they build, yeah,
well, yeah, well,
yeah,
for now,
yeah. Some of those
until they
robots,
build like a live Patrick Murtagaloo that can just like walk out on the court
with the French accent.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh la la.
Oh my god. Yeah, exactly. Wait, yeah. If that happens, it's done. Honestly, that would be the end of the world for me if they started having like AI coaches, robot coaches out there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think
But
people always enjoy seeing other people do difficult things and impressive things. And playing a sport at a high level is a great thing to watch. It's also a great thing to do, you know.
yeah,
And no matter how good technology gets, I think we'll always enjoy seeing people do things. And we'll always enjoy learning things, I think, as humans. So I think we'll be good on that front, at least for a while.
yeah. Let's hope. No, but yeah, no. It's been a great journey so far, and excited to kind of see how it progresses this year and going into next season. But yeah, just grateful for the opportunity so far. And I will say, one thing I think most of the players I've coached can definitely attest to this is the relationships you build along the way. For me as a coach, but for these parents and players too, like everyone out there, like really cherish it because it is a community. If you get lucky like I did and you're able to work with some great people. I mean, even, you being here across the screen, from me, like our tennis journey too, like it was all because of tennis that we're friends now and we've been involved. And for that same reason, we're here on the Smart Tennis podcast, working alongside Tennis Time and Zach. So I think people just don't realize like there's so many opportunities out there. You just, keep your head down, learn and, work your way through it at all levels as a player, as a parent and as a coach. So.
hmm That's great. Last question. One of
Yeah.
my favorite questions. Shout out to Peter Thiel.
Oh,
What's what's something you used to believe that you now don't?
Just in general or tennis specific?
What's something you thought was true, but now you've changed your mind on?
But you mean like generally, like in life? Anything.
However you want to take it.
Oh gosh. Oh, what's the question again?
What's something that you used to believe?
Yeah, what is something I used to believe?
Yep.
But that's not true anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna go pretty corny on this one, probably.
Oh.
I think okay. There's we could talk. This maybe should be a subject itself for another day. But if I'm to answer this question after the conversation we've had, I'll say that one thing I used to believe that I certainly don't anymore, is that, luck and sort of preparation of like how you prepare for life and how you do those things, like that stops at some point. Like it's just like you do this thing and then that's what you do. When I was a kid, I used to be like, oh, like, my parents do this, and so that's all it is. Or like, this person does this and that. One thing that I've learned very quickly is you're going to be as good at something if you put in the time and you actually invest in it. And that's with your time, that's with your effort, whatever you want to call it. It's easy, and like I said, it's a cheesy thing to say, I know, but I will say, like, I never realized that I could just switch what I wanted to do and, make a living, do even more. Like this podcast is a great example of me being able to kind of extend my passion in the sport further. And so, yeah, I used to believe that wasn't the case. Like if I thought to myself even 5 years ago that I would be coaching college tennis full time and even become a head coach at some point, I would have just not believed any bit of that. And then here I am now with the experiences and kind of the, I guess what I've learned so far in place. Like it just was never a reality for me. So that can change in the blink of an eye. And I never used to believe that. I always used to think like this is just kind of how it is and this is what it will be like. But things can change quickly, and if you're ready for it, then they'll change in the right way for you. And if you're not ready, then as long as you have a good attitude about it, you can still find a way to make it work. But yeah, I think that's the biggest perception of life that I've had that's shifted, is you can change and life can change real quick, so yeah.
Life comes at you fast, as the great Ferris Bueller said. Yes. And in the words of a great meme today, you can just do things. Nobody stop
Is that
it.
Is that a meme?
That's a good, yeah. People say it on Twitter all the time.
I just know the 6-7 one.
No, don't say that.
I actually, when we were talking before, I was gonna say 6 and then 7. I actually, now that thing has come out, you realize how much you actually say 6 and 7 together.
No, you're just saying it's. Oh
no, no. We're debating this later at some point. You say it a lot more now.
No,
because everyone freaks out when you say it.
You're just cognizant of when you say it now.
Or
that's.
But yeah, no. Biggest thing I used to believe is that life couldn't just change like that, and you couldn't kind of shift in the way that you want. But yeah, you can, absolutely can, and that happens at all levels. Like I said, for players, for parents, for coaches, anyone. So
you can just do things.
Yeah. Well, no, it's been a pleasure to be on this episode and talk to you a little bit about I guess my journey. I guess next time we're gonna have to talk about your journey, Daniel.
Okay.
Daniel's story is way more exciting than mine, everyone. It's so many more crazy twists and plot twists left and right. Every step of the way. You think you know him, and then we drop it to him.
I try to be an enigma.
Yeah, Daniel's story is certainly it's like a Tarantino film, I feel like.
An enigma wrapped in a metaphor.
That's right.
All right, Garcian, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, enjoyed it. Take care.
All right. See ya.